Regular City Council meeting is called to order. The time is 6 p.m. Before we begin, council, please put away cell phones. If you have personal business during the meeting, please move for a recess. If you are participating telephonically, please mute your phone unless you are speaking. Also, when speaking, please state your name for those streaming the meeting. As a reminder to attendees, this meeting is being streamed live. The camera is in the back of the council chambers above the clock. Robert's Rules of Order is the parliamentary authority for council meetings under Wasilla Municipal Code 2.04.090. Under this authority, I respectfully request council observe the following. Kindly seek recognition before speaking, that no member speaks more than twice on the same motion without an affirmative vote on a motion to suspend the rules. That no member speaks a second time until everyone who wishes to do so has spoken once. The purpose of recognizing these rules is to ensure the right to speak is equally respected and that the discussion is not dominated. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cottle.
Here.
Councilmember Graham.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Crafton.
Here.
Councilmember Velock.
Here.
Councilmember Rubio.
Here.
You do have a quorum, Madam Mayor. All council members are present with us in chambers.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Councilmember Cottle, if you'd lead us, please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item of business is approval of the agenda. Before changes are discussed, are there conflicts of interest to declare? Hearing none. Are there changes to the agenda?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Crafton.
can I move 8.4.8, AM number 2430 to new business, please?
Are there any other changes? Hearing none, is there an objection? The agenda is approved as amended. We are now at special orders of the day. There is one proclamation recognizing Independence Day, which I will read aloud. City of Wasilla Proclamation recognizing Independence Day. Whereas June 11, 1776, the colony's Second Continental Congress met in Philadelphia and formed a committee whose express purpose was drafting a document that would formally sever their ties with Great Britain. And whereas July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was adopted, announcing the colony's separation from Great Britain. And whereas the nation's founding fathers declared to their fellow colonists and the world our inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And whereas each year on July 4th, we celebrate the birth of our nation and the signing of the Declaration of Independence, recognizing our great country as an enduring symbol of freedom, equality, and opportunity for all. And whereas the freedoms that were won at the birth of our nation are defended every day by the dedicated men and women of the United States Armed Forces, past and present. And whereas Alaska is known as the last frontier, a great land of limitless opportunities, the spirit of our state lives on today as we continue to look to our bright and limitless future. Whereas on July 4th, 2024, we celebrate 248 years of independence. Now therefore I, Glenda D, Ledford, Mayor of the City of Wasilla, do hereby proclaim July 4th, 2024 as Independence Day in Wasilla and encourage all Alaskans to celebrate the birth of our nation and recognize the importance of our independence and freedom. Dated this 24th day of June, 2024. Okay, we are now at Commission and Agency Reports. Public Works Director, Eric Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. I want to take an opportunity to share with you some updates on some project we've been working on this spring. We're blessed to finally see some summer weather, but we've been working since weight restrictions basically to get moving on some projects. One of the things we face, of course, is we're ending our fiscal year. We've all worked hard on the budget. And so projects that we can complete in the spring before July 1st can be limited, but we are very thankful and fortunate that we've been funded in the last year or so to have the funds to move forward with these projects I'm going to show you. If we can advance. Yeah, it's definitely on. It's not connected.
Sorry about that.
It's not proceeding. We can do that.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. We're gonna highlight half a dozen projects, but we have more that we're undertaking. The first project is the completion of the tennis court resurfacing. So this was partially paid for with some grant money. But as you probably recall, the courts had been cracked and growing weeds for quite some time, and we were unable to complete it last summer because of the rain. So we're really excited that the weather allowed for this, and it's just beautiful. If you stop by, bright, fresh, new paint, and there's newly painted practice boards up on the fence as well. So we've seen students and the public out there playing. One of the exciting things about this too is we had some paint left over and a little bit of budget left. So we're gonna take that remaining material and resurface the pickleball courts too, which are right next door. So keep your eye out on that. The next projects are different parking lot upgrades. So this is a photo of the parking lot, which is right behind your shoulders next door. This was a parking lot installation as well as a stormwater management system. So we have some infiltration systems, we have some really nice planting, and so this will take stormwater from Herman, as well as the parking lot itself, and pre-treat it before it rises to a level where it enters the underground the underground storm drains. So we're excited to see this grow. Big Dipper Construction did this work for us. They've been diligently watering it. So if you come by in the morning, they'll have brought their water truck to keep that grass moist, and we'll see some really good sprouting here in a second.
Eric, so now that we have that parking over there, is there gonna be any change to access to City Hall so people will start using that parking lot, or? I mean,
Accessing which door is open?
Right,
No, the doors will remain the same. This will be overflow parking for both City Hall, the park, and just downtown users as we anticipate that the couplet project will have some more pressure for parking as this lot gets, these nearby parcels get redeveloped, so.
For public meetings.
Yes, and for public meetings, correct?
Eric, this is also part of the MS4.
Yes, so this is a really important part for some of the stormwater management that we're doing for downtown stormwater drainage. Another update is we recoated and then repainted the existing parking lot up at the main entrance. And so because the main entrance shifted, we wanted to make it more visually descriptive to the public, so it's a little bit more obvious where the right door is. And so we did some door upgrades as well. There's a brand new entry door. We painted around it. We coated the entire parking lot, and then the handicap spots were moved to in front of the main entrance, and then staff parking was moved to where the ramp is. And this was mostly done with staff time. We had a contract to do the ceiling coat, but the rest of our staff painted, did the striping, but did the pre-cleaning, did the crack sealing, so it was very effective time-wise. We've been replacing septic tanks. This is the holiday tank replacement a couple blocks over. This was a pretty complicated project because there were utilities running across the top of it, a storm drain, and so this was a really important tank to replace. It was pretty old, and it had been tied into an old French drain, so we repaired that, and this was another project that we did with Big Dipper Construction. All back up. We also were able to use those boards that you see, that's blue board insulation, those are remnants that we salvaged from the windstorm when the insulation blew off the spruce water tank. Our staff picked up hundreds and hundreds of those and have them squirreled away in different facilities, so we're excited to get them out of storage and start to use them where we need them, so that's something we've been doing.
So Eric, what, do you have a certain number of tank replacements that are scheduled for this summer, or?
We have a list that we've done inspections on. We haven't mobilized that list for this summer because we've been working on both the paving and the budget preparation. So that's our next forecast, is to put out the list of projects, tank replacement projects that we intend to go after. So the next project is a drainage project that we completed next to Nelson and Graybark. As you know, Graybark frost heaves every year. There's a very active spring in that area. This project alleviates some of that pressure. We didn't get into the asphalt of Graybark yet. We've got a broader plan that we need to complete first, but this was creating a drainage way so that any of the water that we bring out of the next phase will have a place to go. And it ties in nicely with the bridge that's existed in Idita Park for a long time that has never had any water underneath it. So we brought it down. I think they had this in mind, they just hadn't gotten around to it when they built the bridge. But this brought a ditch down and we crossed Nelson and brought that water across. And you can see basically within hours, it had run the course of that new ditch and is slowly making its way to the first pond in the Idita Park storm drain pond system. So eventually, as the ground starts to absorb that water, you'll start to see flow into that pond. So it's neat to finally connect that. This was another project with Big Dipper. And the other thing that we were able to do during this project, we were able to go address some of the radiuses in and out of the parking lot that serves the tennis courts. There had been potholes that formed. The radiuses were a little too sharp when they were initially made. We were able to patch those, deal with some failing asphalt from the ATV trail crossing, and then pave 3 ADA entrances from the parking lot into the park and the trail that had never been connected. They weren't ADA compliant in any way. So we're really excited to have really improved the access for visitors in that parking lot. They can go quite easily from the parking spots in that lot onto the trail system. We completed the library HVAC project. You may remember when Director Treesh from the library came in and talked about the state of the existing HVAC controls. They had basically been locked out of the controls for about 3 years because of the obsolete system that came with the building. This replacement brings it into 21st century, and it brings it in line with the police station and the Menard Center. And so they're very excited to be able to control it again, and it turned out really well. And this is a very successful project between Public Works and the library for the project management of it. And so we're really excited to have that compatibility with several other really important city facilities. And the last project is a small but important project at the airport. Roads airport staff regraded the Stoll, which is the short takeoff and landing gravel strip next to the main runway. That's very important for all the Tundra tire airplanes that like to land off the field. So staff procured about, I think it was 300 tons of D1 and then graded it and compacted it. And they usually take on a section, about a third of the Stoll every year. And so this is a successful resurfacing of a good portion of the Stoll this year. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Johnson?
Madam Mayor, to Eric. So these are lists of projects which you've obviously are well along the way and/or pretty much completed in most cases. I was just curious, at the beginning of the budget season, I'd asked if we could get anything done with the beach at Newsom Park. I did notice a very heavy usage every time that this park is used. Every time the sun really comes out and shines, a beautiful day like today, the thing was crowded, and our beach is in really bad shape. Is there anything that we can do to improve that beach? Both because it's a danger and it's an eyesore.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. I've been looking for a sand supply that'd be, compatible with that use, and talking with my staff about how we would apply that. I think there's a way we can do it. We'd have to talk to the Army Corps because it's waters of the U.S. and we have to get a permit for that. So I think it'd be pretty easy for us to find a way to manage the application of the sand. I just want to make sure that we have a good material source, so we're not importing something expensive. We get what we need, but it's definitely a project that we're evaluating what it'll take, and we'll bring it back to the council when we have a better scope and estimate to see if it's something that could receive funding.
Yeah, I don't envision this to be a huge project. This is more of a, couple of truckloads full of sand or the correct kind of gravel and a skid steer.
I think that it would be doable. I think making sure that we can permit it is the first step through the Army Corps, and then making sure that we have a material that meets the needs of a beach sand. Definitely want to buy the right stuff the first time.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Gray?
Speaking of parks, I wanted to comment on how much better Nunley Park looks now that that tree line is being cleaned up out there. I've been out there a couple times since that work has happened, and usually when I do that, I'm collecting needles. I have yet to collect any needles since that started, and I think the improved visibility in there makes our families feel much more comfortable being in the park and having their kids in the park. So please pass on to the Parks Department that that work is being noticed.
I will. Yeah, they're very proud of that. I think it turned out wonderful.
Madam Mayor, to Eric.
Nikki?
Eric, I know we did the parking lot upgrades out here, and why are we changing the entrance? I know, if I recall, it was changed during COVID, and maybe I'm remembering that wrong, but why are we changing the entrance to the city hall?
That's a great question. I don't have. So my understanding, before I got here, the main entrance was down by the clerks. I believe there were some security incidents that led to that not being the normal entrance. It's only open during public meetings. The entrance closer to HR, kind of up the stairs, that is really just an ADA access now. The entrance where Public Works was the decision was made to make that the main entrance because that's where most of the public business is done. And so with moving planning down there, you can reach the finance department, you can reach Public Works, and you can reach planning. And then it was decided to have the rest of the building by appointment so that the building could be controlled for security reasons. There had been some pretty active, call them First Amendment auditors, people with cameras, and they had been testing other facilities like Palmer and the borough and trying to access areas that weren't open to them. And what we saw was that if there weren't locked doors or signage everywhere saying it's not public, they would basically barge their way in and make staff very uncomfortable and risk, confidential information being shown. And because of that access being ADA compliant and having most of the normal business, we put that door in there in the hallway. And so that's been modified to the main entrance. And so then a lot of our work has been to make that more clear so that the public's not confused. So we're trying to go for a visual understanding when you pull in the parking lot. The doorway's highlighted in a different color, the handicap parking's right in front. It's just more obvious when you pull in, and we've added some signage as well so that we don't want the public to be confused and try 2 doors before they make it in and get to the normal business entities that they're here for.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, we are at public participation. There's no item scheduled for public hearing, so we'll move directly to persons to be heard. We are now at persons to be heard, a time for members of the public to share their views with the council. This is not a question and answer period or a time for dialogue. Speakers may be referred to administration, or issues raised may be taken under advisement by the council or administration. Additionally, over the last year, the city of Wasilla has routinely had members of the public attend and read excerpts from novels, some of which involve sexual content and/or descriptions of incest or domestic violence that are not intended for children under the age of 14, or may be triggering to listeners and viewers. For those of you with young children viewing or listening to this meeting, or who may be triggered by these descriptions of incest or domestic violence, please be aware we are now entering public comment, and you may want to mute the video or temporarily exit the meeting. We will notify the public when the public comment has ended and council is moving on to the next item on the agenda. For those of you participating in public comment tonight, I respectfully ask you to remember that our attendees, viewers, and listeners may be under the age of 14, are victims of domestic violence, and are not choosing to read the passages that you are choosing to read to them. The first one is Jackie Goforth. Please begin your testimony by stating your first and last name, and if you are a city resident, you have 3 minutes.
Greetings, Madam Mayor and Council. My name is Jackie Goforth. I'm a resident of Matsu. I left 2 weeks ago to attend the Matsu Health Foundation. Oh, by the way, my comments are all my own. They always have been. I do not speak for anyone, and they do not speak for me. When I was at the Matsu Health Foundation, the CEO mentioned that no one who's there has any kind of agenda involved in anything that they do. And I knew that was not correct, because I was sent a picture from someone of a Matsu Health Foundation office that had several books destined for libraries that said donate to libraries, and they all had woke, Marxist, LGBTQ subjects. Well, after I spoke and after the meeting was over, a lady came over and chatted with me. And she was very annoyed that I had said BLM. BLM should not have been listed as the books that are part of the woke Marxist ideology. And when I told her, look, bottom line, parents have the right to raise their children, she replied, not if they send them to school, they don't. Now, after it took my breath for about 2 seconds, and then I said, yes, they do. In this school district, they have 2-week notice they have to give. And then she asked, what on earth is the problem with BLM? And there's too much to mention, so I decided to pull up the original Black Lives Matters manifesto. This was done back in the year 2020. It does not exist anywhere on the internet, anywhere. I downloaded it onto a thumb drive, and I printed off of a computer that has never been on the internet. That's why I still have it. Okay? Now, everyone knows Marxist ideology and the hallmarks of it, right? Get rid of the fathers, get rid of the families, get rid of property, everybody's in a commune, hence the word communist. Children are the ward of the government, they teach them whatever they want. This is the hallmark of Marxism, correct? Well, I want to direct your attention to page 4. Page 4, and I believe they're highlighted. This is what was in the original Black Lives Matter manifesto. I'm not making it up. We do the work required to dismantle cisgender privilege. That means people who are born and believe that they're the same sex that they are. We build a space that's free of sexism and environments in which men are centered. We dismantle the patriarch practice. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure. We foster a queer affirming network, freeing ourselves of the tight grip of heteronormative thinking. Now I ask you, what about that has anything to do with melanin content of a person's skin and societal reactions to that? Absolutely nothing. Why do people believe that once the children are in their control, they can inculcate them with a Marxist regime? And it's probably because the CCP has donated billions to our universities in the last 50 years, and they had put the agenda in. Thank you so much.
Next is Tom Stearns. Please begin your testimony by stating your first and last name, and if you're city residents, comments limited to 3 minutes.
Good evening, my name is Tom Stearns. I'm the Senior Ambassador for the Wasilla Area Seniors Incorporated. I've been gone for a few months, and over those last 4 months, a lot of things have happened at WASI. First, a reminder, we will be closed the 4th of July. We'll all be out at your picnic. So, the nutrition services, Kat, who's our kitchen manager, challenged everybody to go out in the community and see if we can get a sponsor for every day for the month of July. She called it Christmas in July. And I'm pleased to announce that we have done that. And so every day is sponsored by somebody. Then we've had our Meals on Wheels. Well, before that, we had what was it? Our auction. In May, we had our auction. We had a goal of $13,000. We raised $13,000. And so that was very successful. And then last Saturday, we had our Miles for Meals fun run. You were there, I believe, and that was very successful. We had quite a number of people, and we've raised $57,000 for WASI and for the Meals on Wheels. Now, why is that important? Okay, we do this a couple of times a year. We're raising funds and all this stuff, and you hear me talking about this all the time. It's important because there are seniors out there in our community here that don't have meals. They can't get out. They can't go to WASI or to some other place to get meals. And this is, in some cases, the only meal that they have each day, and the only time that they see people. And so it's very important what we're doing, and every dollar is important. And so what do we have coming up? One of our ladies has put together a cookbook, or is in the process of putting together a cookbook. This isn't just your normal everyday cookbook. This is our seniors putting this together from years and years of experience and stuff, and there are stories and pictures and all sorts of stuff, and so that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stearns. And we are on to Sharon Johnson, staff from Senator Wilson. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Sharon Johnson, and I live outside of the city limits. And I am here to represent Senator Wilson this evening. He's out of town, and he just asked me if I would stop in tonight and attend the meeting to remind everyone that we are here.
Can't hear.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. That we're here in the interim and available for questions or concerns. I usually am in the office at 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, unless I get assigned some other duties. Please call, leave a message, and I hope everyone's enjoying the summer, finally.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Madam Mayor, if I may ask a question. Sharon, you mentioned that you are in the office. Where is the senator's office, please?
Oh, the LIO office is underneath the Matsu Central School and in the back parking lot there. All the signs are there for each of the legislative offices. And his phone number is 907-376-4866. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Sharon. Mark Ewing. Please begin your testimony by stating your first and last name, and if
Yes.
you're a city resident, and
I
you've got
guarantee
3
you,
minutes.
You'll hear me. My first name is Mark, last
Mark,
name Ewing.
please turn your microphone on. There you go.
There we go. Do I start over now? First name
Yes.
is Mark, last name's Ewing, 477 South Boundary here in Wasilla. I didn't come to lecture tonight. I just have some observations. First off, I want to welcome Council Member Cottle to the shooting gallery. I see you guys are going to be spending $2 million tonight, and that's how you run a business. The thing I want to point out, it's just bothering me right now, is we have 1 million tourists going through this town each summer. And right now, this town looks like it's in shambles. We need to cut the lawn along the railroad. When Rupright was in there, he backbilled the railroad for the city doing that. We need to put flowers back out. I was never a fan of the flowers, but now that they're not here, I drove to Anchorage yesterday and drove down where the flowers used to be. They're gone. And what's happening to the beautification? Let me remind you, in 1996, we had a summer just like this one right here, hot. And Miller's Reach fire. So it's not just beautification, it's fire protection. And that swath along the railroad tracks, the grass is tall. It's gonna, if somebody throws a cigarette butt in there, God knows. Anyway, let's talk about the new road you put in. I think it's great, up to Home Depot. I don't know what it's called. I think it's called Roberts, maybe it's Depot. I don't know. There are no stripes on that road. People don't respect each other's lanes. Please get some stripes on there and some 25-mile-an-hour zone. A lot of people don't realize they're popping into the city when they come down from Home Depot. They go by my house 40, 50 miles an hour. Just so you know, that's, if you want to catch them, between 5 and 7 every night and about 5 and 7 in the morning, you're welcome to park in my alley. I got a kick out of the coin flip. I think that's pretty cool, seeing as how we're all computerized on selecting a council member. The theft inside our city, it's ridiculous. The other night they cut off the exhaust things. Website, half an hour here to get somebody to get me on so I can direct pay. Needs to be worked out. Should be a button that says pay your utilities. When we have a mayor that dies, we normally name something after him. I'd like to mention that I would like to see you consider naming the library after Mayor Upright. All right, thank you.
Okay, and next is Karen Lewis. Please begin your testimony by stating your first and last name, and if you are a city resident, comments are limited to 3 minutes.
Good evening, my name is Karen Lewis. I live off the Wasilla Fish Hook. Those books you were talking about that everybody's listening to out there, they're not, 14-year-olds shouldn't be listening, shouldn't be reading them or hearing it, and adults shouldn't be reading them or hearing them. I mean, you've heard it, you guys have heard them, you've heard this filth that's in there, so we just need to get them out of the library. And we're going to keep appealing to you all because you're the leaders. You need to get people in there with a good moral compass and some integrity, some character, good character, because giving that to children is demonic. That is the best way to explain it. A public library does not acquire internet terminals in order to create a public forum for web publishers to express themselves any more than it collects books in order to provide a public forum for the authors of books to speak. It provides internet access not to encourage a diversity of views from private speakers, but for the same reasons it offers other library resources to facilitate research, learning, and recreational pursuits by furnishing materials of requisite and appropriate quality. This is from the United States versus the American Library Association, by the way, in 2003. To fulfill their traditional missions, public libraries must have broad discretion to decide what material to provide to their patrons. Although they seek to provide a wide array of information, their goal has never been to provide universal coverage. Instead, public libraries seek to provide materials that would be of the greatest direct benefit or interest to the community. To this end, libraries collect only those materials deemed to have requisite and appropriate quality. The selection of materials for libraries is to separate out the gold from the garbage, not to preserve everything. The principles underlying Forbes and Finley also apply to a public library's exercise of judgment in selecting the material it provides to its patrons. Just as forum analysis and heightened judicial scrutiny are incompatible with the role of public television stations and the role of NEA, they are also incompatible with the discretion of public libraries must have to fulfill their traditional missions. Public library staffs necessarily consider content in making collection decisions and enjoy broad discretion in making them. We need people in there that will choose books that won't assault young people's minds and are not obscene. Thank you.
I will close public comment and move on to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, please read the items for approval under the consent agenda by title.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have one introduction this evening. Public hearing on July 8th, 2024. That's ordinance serial number 2421, amending the fiscal year 2025 budget by accepting and appropriating Lowe's Hometown Heroes Grant in the amount of $21,000 for renovations to the dispatch center, break room, and offices at MATCOM. 2 sets of meeting minutes to approve. Special meeting minutes, May 22nd, 2024, and May 29, 2024. We have 3 resolutions up for adoption. The first is resolution serial number 2405, adopting the fiscal year 2025 salary structure and pay ranges for non-represented International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 302, Alaska District Council of Laborers, Local 341, and Wasilla Police Department Employees Association, employees of the City of Wasilla. Resolution serial number 2406, authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Concession Solutions LLC for lease space in the Curtis D. Menard Memorial Sports Center in the amount of $6,000 for 12 months, July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. Resolution serial number 2408, authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Wasilla Youth Soccer Association for lease space in the Curtis D. Menard Memorial Sports Center in the amount of $9,600 for 1 year. Action memorandums this evening. The first is AM number 2423, contract award to Denali Refuse in the amount of $28,900 for solid waste disposal services. AM number 2424, contract award to Alaska Communication Services in the amount of $175,000 for information technology support at MATCOM. AM number 2425, contract award to First National Bank of Alaska in the amount of $28,000 for banking services. AM number 2426, contract award to Birch Horton Bittner and Shiro in the amount of $144,000 for general counsel legal services. AM number 2427, contract award to BDO USA LLP in the amount of $87,249 for financial audit services for fiscal year 2025. AM number 2428, contract award to Valley Business Machines in the amount of $41,293 for citywide copier printer lease program. And lastly, AM number 2429, contract award to RWC International Limited in the amount of $239,330 for a 2025 sewer vacuum pumper truck.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Is there a second?
Rubio seconds.
It's been moved by Councilmember Cottle and seconded by Councilmember Rubio to approve the consent agenda as read. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. There is no unfinished business. We are now at new business. Madam Clerk, please read the title.
Thank you. AM number 2430 was moved, so we'll take that first since it is an action item. That's contract award to Northern Asphalt Construction in the amount of $1,210,870 for the 2024-2025 roads paving program.
Mr. Crafton.
Thank you, Mayor. I just mostly had a curiosity question, council might be curious about as well. We had a bid protest come in against this one. I was just curious if,
Do we have a motion to adopt?
I don't know. Motion to move, AM 2430. Sorry, Mayor, I thought you.
Sorry.
Seconds.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion?
Thank you, Mayor. So going back, I just was curious to see, I'm not sure if it'd be finance or public works that would speak to the bid protest that came in around this. I'm just curious to see kind of what shook out about this. Our clerk said normally we don't see those come through. And so I was just curious kind of what that was about there.
If I may, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Crafton and I had the conversation, and it was forwarded to council because council was copied on it. I don't believe council has a role in a bid protest, but, so that's why council received it.
Public Works, Eric,
Or Attorney Holly?
or
I
else,
defer to Attorney.
Holly.
Sure, okay, so, this may come up before council in the form of a litigation or, legal update or in the form of an executive session at some point. But right now with the bid protest, even the use of that term, one of the things that we are looking at, just to be clear, is sometimes you have an objection or a concern raised by a contractor, and whether that is in the form of a formal bid protest is one question, because the city doesn't have bid protest procedures under its code. The other question is, what are the obligations of the city and what are the concerns, and are there valid concerns raised? And all of those questions are being answered by our construction department at the law firm, and they're working with Public Works to just sort of walk through that process. And there'll be a report back to council after that process has been done. But I can say at this stage, so are you looking for sort of a rundown or summary of the specifics of the bid protest, or are you, or
You
Just
answered
want
the
to-
question
is
as
that-
what I was trying to understand. It sounds like something's being worked on at this point, and we'll hear more about it later. It sounds like in the form of a report. That's all I was curious about. Thank you.
yes, exactly.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Graham.
I think Mr. Crafton brings up a valid point. I mean, we just approved a contract where the low bidder was not approved because of irregularity in their bid. They didn't meet the bid specifications, and we were informed by a bidder on the contract for the paving that the low bidder was not or did not meet the bid specifications. So how are we determining, well, it's okay if we're gonna spend $300,000, but it's not okay if we're gonna spend $1.1 million? I mean, where's the hole in the contracting process that allows us to do that? I mean, we have specifications. Do we just decide, well, we don't want to meet specifications on this particular bid? I mean, there needs to, if we have specifications, the specifications need to be met. And if the specifications, which I believe in this case had to do with posting a bond or something like that, that wasn't met, then how is that different from other specifications not being met? I mean, do we pick and choose which ones we have to meet, or do we meet the specifications?
Holly?
Okay, I'm gonna try to address that question. You may have to give me a little more information if I don't address it. So one thing I will say is, so when we have a bid and there's specifications, some of those specifications are mandated and some of them are not. It depends on the way that the RFP was written and what the bid process looks like. The other answer is that, the city always has the authority to reject a bid, so we have to keep that in mind. But we can walk through each of the procurement procedures for each of the contracts and each of the awards. But I think that's the only way to really answer your question without inadvertently making presumptions about that particular process. So if we want to, so what I would recommend is if there is a procurement process that council feels is improper, or they don't agree with that award, or there's a concern regarding specifications and whether or not those have been met, then council should defer that and not approve it at this time. I mean, if that's a decision you can make. If we want to go through it in detail, then I would want to, just identify the procurement that you want to visit, and that way we can provide you a legal update regarding the process and regarding the analysis once we've looked at all of the records and looked at the way that the award was handled.
Mr. Greer?
So moving forward, I mean, since in one meeting, we're dealing with two different bids, or not bids on two different projects here. One was approved even though it didn't meet specifications, and one was not approved because it did not meet specifications. Moving forward on these AMs, I would like to see that the contract was awarded to XYZ Corporation and all bid specifications were met. If there are exceptions, I think it should be part of the staff report. XYZ Corporation was awarded the bid even though, the bid specification requiring whatever was not met. I think that's a reasonable expectation of the staff report.
Eric?
Through the mayor, we did not adjust specifications in any of the bids. We follow code, which, so that everyone knows what the level playing field is, and then we go above and beyond that to make sure that our bids are clear to the bidders. We don't want ambiguity. We want an even playing field for bidders. I think what you're referring to on one of the bids was there was a request that if the truck could be supplied sooner, would that be allowed to modify the low bid? And code said no, and the specification said no, and so this is the low bidder for the truck that was approved through the consent agenda. It will get here many months after the second bidder, but the specs did not talk about any preclusion to receiving it sooner. So that's fair across the board, and so it was the low bid accepted as low bid. And then the next question about the bid bond, the resolution through our lawyers was, what does code say? And we followed code, and so the low bid in the bidding package for this AM 2430 is the low bidder, and they met the code and they met the specifications, and that's why we're bringing it forward as the low bidder that we hope that you'll approve tonight. So we will absolutely talk about nuances if that's necessary in the bid, but nothing's being modified outside of the regular procurement process with all the specs intact.
Thank you.
Okay, is there
Madam
further
Mayor?
discussion?
Madam Mayor, to Eric, from what I understand in the capital budget on page 191, line item 160, 4320, blah, 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 we have a budget of 1.5 million. This is coming in at 1.2 million, so that gives us a $300,000 underrun. What are we planning on doing with that 300,000?
Thank you for noticing that. We didn't want to go over in the scope of the paving, and so looking at what is available for the rest of the season, we may come back to the council and ask for approval to spend the rest of that in additional projects through change orders.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none, is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion passes. Okay, Madam Clerk, please read the title of the next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is discussion and possible direction on the appointment process to fill a vacant council seat in Committee of the Whole.
Is there a motion to enter the Committee of the Whole?
Madam Mayor, I move that we enter Committee of the Whole for the purposes of the discussion on how to proceed when we have a vacancy on the council.
Is there a second?
Madam Mayor, I would ask that we define committee of the whole, who is part of that committee, before I second that.
Madam Mayor, that would include the council, the attorney, the clerk, and any staff members needed for that purpose.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just like it's a council, so you're the Committee of the Whole, and just like any other item, if you have questions as you walk through any other item, staff is happy to engage with you as you call upon them. Does that answer your question, sir?
It does.
Thank you.
I second the motion.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, we are now in Committee of the Whole. And the time is 6:51 p.m.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton.
Thank you. I think a good spot here, maybe if the clerk would kind of just refresh us on where we left off with this conversation, because if I recall, that we had an item before us to make the change, and there was a lot of deliberation around it. Could you just remind us as to where kind of some of that fell last time? If you had anything for us there?
Well, when the ordinance, through the chair to the council, when the ordinance was additionally brought forward, the intent was, council has a vacancy. So we do our normal noticing, we have an application, we vet the candidate. The candidates come in like they normally do. They have 5 minutes, I believe, off the top of my head. There's interview questions by council. There's an interview back and forth. Once those interviews have concluded, once all interviews have concluded, unless there is a true reason to enter executive session, i.e. reputation and character of a candidate, what would happen is the council would receive a ballot with all of the candidates' names, and you would just vote for one, just like you do at the polls. Myself, the deputy clerk, and the city attorney would gather those ballots. We would go tally the results, and the candidate with the greatest number of votes would be appointed. So whether that was, two, we have a 6-person, if two of you, depending on the amount of candidates, if 2 was the greatest number of votes, in that instance, it would pass. Under normal circumstances, any other motion, any other matter before the council, it's 4 votes to pass something. If this ordinance is adopted, it would simply, the appointment would be made by the person receiving the greatest number of votes. Not ranked choice, just single vote. Vote for one. That's it in a nutshell.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Now, I remember there was something in there that discussed a coin toss, because there is a possibility, for the example could be if we had 4 council members and 2 of them were, so we had 2 vacant seats at the time. Honestly, we could actually still, even with 5 members, end up with a tie, just based on how many candidates come before us. If we had 3 candidates and 2 council members like A, 2 like B, and 1 like C, we have a tie at that point. I'm at a loss how we determine how to break that tie, because personally, my thought the coin toss was not the, I personally didn't think the coin toss was a great option. I'm not sure what the council would feel on that one.
So through the chair to Councilmember Crafton, Holly, you can chime in whenever you feel like you need to. That really came from, if you look under our elections code, if there is a tie after a recount, it's a coin toss. And so we were just following practice.
And one thing I would just add to that is when you read the language, it's a coin toss, drawing or other method of random selection. And the reason why it has those additional options is because sometimes you're going to want to do some sort of lot drawing or some sort of lottery or some sort of pull the number from the bingo machine. And usually in elections, having the making sure it's codified, that it's a random selection process, allows council to look at the options, and the clerk's office really to look at the options based on if you have 5, you're going to use a different method. And even if you're going to use a coin toss, you'd have to come up with some method where one person goes first and someone goes second. So what I usually see in communities, most Alaskan communities have a provision like this. And that is because, as the clerk said, that is what we see under election code for the state of Alaska. But this allows enough flexibility to come up with whatever process. So that's a conversation that the clerk's office would have based on the number of candidates. Like, do we need to have I see the sort of the drawing of straws. I've seen that used in communities. And I have seen, more often than not, I've seen a bingo, like where you put a number, you assign a number to each one, and you have a machine and you just spin it and draw one. So you can put can put 5 balls in the machine, so to speak.
And then, Madam Mayor, if I may, and always remember, council, under law, you have the right, under the right circumstances to enter executive session. This does not prohibit entering executive session if warranted.
So one question would be, could we have the sitting mayor at that point break the tie? Is that an option? And only if we're at a tie of a 3-3 at that point. See people shaking their heads, so just I'm throwing out there as an option. The other question I had would be, so then you're saying the executive session, let's say we do end up in a tie, we could at that point enter executive session to deliberate if we wanted to, if we had comments that we wanted to bring forward to, or are you?
Holly, do you want to field that one?
No, I mean, I think the question would be, is council's desire for executive session, is it permitted under the executive session provisions of law, both state and city? And really, the city's executive session laws must mirror the state of Alaska's. They can't be more narrow or more broad. So for that reason, yes, in theory, if we found a reason, but it would be a very limited and narrow reason, and it would be the same reasons that the clerk referenced before, reputation and character primarily.
Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're trying to fix a system that's not broken here. I've been on the council 9 years. I think we've appointed 4 persons to vacancies in those 9 years. We've never had a ballot here at the dais to do that. We've always, following the candidates' introduction of themselves, and they're answering the questions that the council has put forward, we've always entered executive session to talk about the candidates. When you ran for city council, you spent months literally campaigning, some more active than others, but answering questions from your neighbors, answering questions from people that you wanted to be on the council here with, perhaps talking to the mayor, talking to other elected officials to bring forward your views and values. For us to say, that we're going to make a decision based on a 5-minute campaign from somebody here without having a discussion amongst ourselves, I think is nonsense. And with all due respect to the attorney, she is not in executive session. She doesn't know what we're talking about, and exactly what we are talking about are things that affect the reputation and character of the individuals involved. So we're trying to fix something that's not broken here. We're worried about a problem that doesn't exist. There's no reason for us to change the way that we have been doing things because it works. If the wheel is round, let's keep it round. Let's not saw off one end of the wheel to see if it makes it more fuel efficient. We've got a system that works, and that system does not include having a ballot here at the dais and the person with 2 votes and everybody else gets 1 vote. that makes absolutely no sense. That defeats the purpose of the council, which is to most effectively help govern the city of Wasilla.
Is there further discussion?
Madam Mayor?
Nikki?
Yeah, I think the discussion has been good when we go into executive session, because, Stu's right, we don't know much about these people except for the 5 minutes that we listened to them. I think what it comes down to is when it was voting, we seemed to be under the impression it had to be unanimous. And that's what took us an hour and a half or whatever. I like how it doesn't have to be unanimous. It just has to be the majority votes for one candidate. I think we can have a discussion, but we don't need to be unanimous. And I'd like the vote, the most votes, the guy gets it.
Mr. Johnson?
Madam Mayor, Council, I think the system that we had actually worked. And I think the thing that really stuck with at least me is the fact that we came in back from executive session after listening to all of the people, and we were divided in terms of the qualifications of the candidates and the direction that we had to go. And yet, through it all, through a discussion and through additional debate, which was open in front of everybody, we came to a conclusion, which is a very good conclusion. We didn't need a coin toss, we didn't need anything else, but I think had we had a coin toss type procedure, it would have been very easy for us to end the debate. We don't have to have any discussion. And what's wrong with spending an hour to come up with the best person that we can to sit here? We spent the hour. We came up with the best solution, and we did that through an agreement of us people on the council. I thought that was a well-working system, rather than just abdicating our responsibility to a coin that goes up into the air. I think what we did worked. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I personally have witnessed several coin tosses in the past for elections. Somebody's happy, somebody's not. It's the way it is. I like the idea of the majority vote, not having the unanimous. I do have a question through the mayor to the city attorney. Because as a council, they've been using the vehicle of executive session and using it at times not for the reasons that executive session is in our code. Using executive session the way we have, does it ever leave us open to litigation?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
And one thing I would add, just for council's consideration, there are so many things that you do as a governing body that would be easier behind closed doors. But when you make those decisions and you weigh the thoughts and considerations of one another behind closed doors, the public is excluded from that discussion. And that is the purpose of the Open Meetings Act that creates the vulnerability. So if we're not expressly under a provision in the executive session, provisions of law, then that creates vulnerability. But if we're also in violation of the purpose of the Open Meetings Act, that makes damages and success at litigation stronger. So it's just something to consider. And a lot of times, what we've always done in the past, it feels more comfortable because people don't like to talk about people in the open. We don't like to say the things we like or don't like about a person in front of other people. But that is
this a
not
legal
a
opinion,
character
or are you
reputation.
just, are you just giving us, you're just talking about that? I
That
believe
is
you're here to
absolutely
give
a legal
opinion.
opinion, and that is what you pay me for.
Well,
So
You're out of order.
the staff making comments is out of order.
You are out
This
of
is
order.
executive or this is committee of the whole for
You're
the
out of
city
order.
council.
Councilmember Graham, with all due respect, you pay me to be here and to tell you what I think is and is not a vulnerability under the law. That is exactly what I'm supposed to do, both as a matter of my contract and as a matter of law under your code. So you do not have to agree with me, and the great thing about being a council member is it's a legislative role, which is my opinion as a lawyer, your lawyer. You do not have to agree with me. And the great thing is all of you can vote counter to my advice, and that's okay too.
And that, however, missed the point. You were asked a very specific question by a council member, and then you went off on a tangent. You know, the whole purpose, and I think the clerk even said, you know, we're here as a committee of the whole for the council, and we can ask questions of the staff to help clarify things. I just see that you were completely out of order with that question there, but I'll come back to it.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Johnson?
I want to clarify something and make this totally clear, especially to council. The decision was not made in executive council. The decision was made here with the people sitting here with an open discussion. And the reason that I can tell you that is because I was the person who finally was encouraged and saw the wisdom of changing my position, okay, to resolve the particular issue. So the issue was not, and I repeat, in open session, it was not made in executive session. The decision was made here in the council through a discussion, and it happened to be that I became convinced that my position was previously incorrect, and I was given the opportunity to change my position. So I want to make that very clear that we were not in executive session when the decision was made. It was made in an open discussion in a public forum. Thank you.
And Councilmember Johnson, I would just say that's an important point, because when you're looking at if there's a violation of the Open Meetings Act or exposure for litigation, one question is, are you making decisions in executive session? So that and the notes that are made and memorialized on the record are helpful for the city, that a decision was not made in executive session. The other prong of that analysis, though, goes to why are we allowed to go into executive session? What are we allowed to do there under law? That law is express, and it's interpreted in favor of having discussions in open session in front of the public. So that is the legal advice, and I apologize for getting a little frustrated, Councilmember Graham, but this is a fundamental component of municipal law, so it's difficult to understand, so I just want to make sure I'm being clear. And sometimes narrative helps with clarity.
Is there further discussion?
Madam Mayor. So, I want to point that Mr. Graham was kind of right about the wheel situation here. Like, it is something that has worked in the past. Though at the same, sometimes part of our job is to make things better. And that's part of what this conversation is to find a way that we can make this a little bit better, a little bit more comfortable for the council on how to handle this type of situation. Because I've been on both sides of this dais now. I've been sitting in those seats when I was not the one selected, and now I've been on this side of the dais and made that selection. So I've seen how it works from both ends of the spectrum. And I think it is one of those things that we can do a little bit better, where we come forward and we make this a vote. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. My only concern around it is, and more of a clarifying question here, Madam Clerk, is, are we talking about a majority of whoever just got the most, or are we talking a majority of the sitting council at that time of making that? So if we had 5 members, you need 3. If you have 4, you still need 3. Or is it you have 5 people, it just takes 2? See, and in my eyes, it's a step in the right direction, the vote, I'm okay with it, but not in that fashion, because at that point, it's too easily done where all it takes is 2 council members to put somebody on this dais. All it takes is 2 members having a conversation to be able to put somebody at this dais when, in my eyes, again, we're here as a council. If something has to pass with a majority, then it should pass with a majority. I understand that majority at that time might not be 4, but it's still the majority of the sitting council at that time. And that's my thought on how it would work.
Through the chair to the council, and I apologize, Councilmember Graham, for not being asked this directly. Really, as your clerk, my fear is one of these days we're gonna be at a tie. You're not gonna agree, and I guess that's okay. I just don't know I know that will be coming. I have seen that in 97. I have seen meeting after meeting where the Wasilla City Council, could not agree on anybody. And it finally reached the point, I saw it with my own eyes, they picked you in the purple dress out of the audience. Can we all agree on her? And that was finally, I think people were so tired at that point, truly. So it's a council decision, certainly, we'll make it work.
And to Councilmember Crafton, to your comment, you could do something that's more of a modification where you say, but no less than 3 members. And so then, if there are less than 3 members, then you're not making an appointment that evening, or you go through the process again, or, you know, you could do something like that, or you create a random selection process if you don't get there, you know, so 2 is not enough. And so we can revisit that and look at some of the options in other communities. If if council as a whole doesn't like that potential where you'd have 2 council members elect or appoint a member.
And if I could continue, Mayor, I mean, so using examples, if we have 5, it'd be 3. I mean, the only times I could see us ever potentially ending in a tie in that situation would be if there's 4 sitting council members or 2 sitting council members. Because at that point, I mean, even if we ended up with a tie in some other fashion, I mean, the other way you could go about it is then it's the last person's eliminated. So whoever does a process of elimination at that point where you go, let's just say 5 people are there, we all vote, there's 2 people tie, right? Okay, well now we're going to re-vote based on those 2 members, just those 2 members. Because then it removes the conversation. We have obviously decided we don't want candidate C, D, E, and F, you know? We want candidates A and B is what the council's talking about here. So now we do a simple vote that way, and it can't end in a tie because you're only talking about 2 people. And if you have 5 people, so the only way that we end up in a tie is if there's 2 candidates and there's either 4 sitting council members or 2 sitting council members, because everybody has to vote. Am I making sense here, I guess?
Through the chair to the council, I'm gonna bet that if there's 2 sitting council members, you're gonna have me call a special meeting pretty quickly, as quickly as I can pull it together.
I couldn't see us ever getting
Yeah.
that far to 2 council members, sitting council members, that is. Sorry, Mr. Graham.
Mr. Grove?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With all due respect to the clerk, who, you know, love you like a sister, but we can't go around making changes to the way we do business based on something that happened one time 25 years ago, more than 25 years ago. We have to be aware of the history that something did happen 25 years ago, and you know what? The council resolved the problem. Just like what we're trying to resolve with what happened here when we had 2 vacancies, so you had a situation where you could have a 2-2 vote, where you could have a tie vote. But yet somehow the council resolved the situation, resolved the problem, and we now have 6 people sitting here at the council chambers. You know, what I'm seeing happen here is the same process, and Eric, you may have seen this many times before, where you have a fatal accident at an intersection where somebody was at fault. You know, there's never a fatal accident where nobody's at fault. So somebody ran a red light or failed to yield the right of way and ran into another car and somebody got killed. So what's the answer? Well, the government always comes up with the answer, well, we're gonna put up a stoplight, or we're gonna put up a stop sign, or we're gonna do something. We're gonna make this immediate change based on one thing that happened because it may happen again. Well, you know, in this case, we don't need a stoplight, we don't need a stop sign. It may happen again, and we have to trust that the other people that are elected by the majority vote of the citizens can work together to come up and solve that one problem that one time, as opposed to mandating how the city council is supposed to think when it goes into things. But to Ms. Cottle's question, yes, we could get sued for what happens in executive session. We could get sued for what we do tonight. We could get sued for what we say to one another that happens to be picked up by the microphones. We can get sued for anything. You know, the only person that gets rich on lawsuits is the lawyers, you know, but people do that. It's called lawfare. It's just what people do. We can't walk around being afraid to get sued. We can walk around and make ourselves aware of what the law is, and we have done that, and our attorney has told us 1,000 times, you know, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this. I mean, I you know, be quite honest with you, Holly, I kind of quit listening because your answer is the same every time. Well, don't do that because you might get sued. Well, you know what? We got to do what's right. And if you tell us, well, we have exposure in that, and we understand that there's exposure there, and we do it anyway, that's our decision to do that. And I appreciate your, you know, opinion to that matter. But we're not dealing with anything here which is of such substance that we're going to get, you know, somebody's going to come forward and say, well, you didn't make a public decision. Well, making a public decision, particularly under this method here, I think is totally incorrect. You know, Holly mentioned the Open Meetings Act. Okay, so Stu's not on the council anymore. So he's sitting out there and he wants to be on the council. And, you know, Tim left the council. So I apply. Okay, now what can I do? I can contact city council members and tell you why Stu's a great guy and why you should vote for me. Long before I sit out there and do my 5-minute speech and answer questions from the council. So I can do my campaigning to do that. You, as a council member, have to ask Stu, well, who else have you talked to, Stu? And if I've talked to, if you're gonna be the person I talk to that creates a quorum of the council, you can't talk to me. You can't find out anything about me, you know, because that would be a violation of the Open Meetings Act. You know, so the only chance that we have to talk is in that room behind closed doors to talk about matters of integrity and character for that person who is applying. Because they may have told me something as when they're doing their campaigning or whatever, and I bring it up in that room back there, and Councilperson Cottle may say, what the hell are you talking about? This guy was just sued by whomever for whatever. Well, he didn't mention that, but you may know that, and you may know that, and you may know something different. That's what that room is for, is so that we can cut through the crap and figure out exactly who belongs behind the desk here. We don't need this process here. I have nothing against a coin toss. If the city council is deadlocked and they decide that, you know, they come out here and say, well, we're deadlocked. Madam Clerk, can we flip a coin? Clerk says yes, and that's what we do. There's nothing that says we can't do that. That's acceptable. That's happened in many other communities, many other elections. A coin toss is fine. We're not saying we can't flip a coin, you know, and we're not saying, you know, that we can't discuss people out here in general, but the real discussion, the real facts of character of the individual happen in that room out there, not in front of everybody and not recorded for everybody on the internet to see. We're trying to fix a problem here that does not exist and probably will never exist. There's always a solution, and our job as elected persons is to find that solution. This is not it.
Mr. Crafton.
Mr. Graham brings up actually some really valid points. I mean, do we need to do the vote? I mean, I think it makes it simpler, easier to do. But in reality, what it sounds like the way to do it would be to just say it doesn't take 4. It takes a majority of the seated council at that time. And the reason why I say that is because if we go back there and we are in a position where we have some people for one person and some people on another, we end up in a deadlock. Then the conversation moves away from what we're in executive session for and us trying to sway the other council members, which that's what should be happening in an open meeting at that point. So again, the conversation isn't I guess maybe, and again, I don't think it's broken the way it is right now. I'm just looking at a way to improve the system that we have right now. And so maybe all we just really need to change is say, instead of it requiring 4 members or the what constitutes a quorum, it just requires a majority of the sitting council at that time. So again, if we had 5, it's now 3, is what it would be at that point, is the kind of the way I'm thinking about it at that point. 4, I mean, that's 4 is a different conversation, but that's for the lawyer to figure out at that point, but that's where I'm
would
thinking.
work. That would work, and I think for there's 2 components going on in the ordinance. There is, let's use executive sessions properly, and if someone's facing litigation, that would be a proper reason to enter, and then the vote being a majority of seated members would, I think that would work. I'll defer to the clerk to make sure that I'm not missing something, but legally speaking, I think that would work.
Yeah, we would, through the chair, thank you, Councilmember Johnson, you go first.
Madam Mayor, Counselor, where in this ordinance does it talk about executive session? I'm missing that point. I see the bulk of the changes in paragraph C, which is the coin toss procedure, and I see nothing. Maybe I'm missing something, because I think the discussion has 2 prongs, one of which I agree with, one of which I totally disagree with, okay? The caution on executive session, hear you loud and clear, okay? By the way, any candidate can stop executive session from happening. All they have to do is say, I don't want executive session, and we're stuck, we will do it in front of the council. It only happens if the candidates allow it. Okay, that's number 1. Okay, number 2, we have to realize as a council, the decision is not made there. No, the decision is made here. So this ordinance here is only affecting our discussion and how we proceed within here. So, I mean, where is the executive session part of this ordinance?
And so that's an excellent question. It's really just, as you discuss, a ballot process where you're casting a ballot and your procedures so what this has done is it has codified the clerk's procedures for some of the interview and application process, and then it goes into the ballot process where an applicant they're interviewed, they answer the questions, and then the ballot is distributed and you vote once. It doesn't preclude council or talk about your ability to have an executive session if you have a means. But one of the things that the process necessarily did is it took that out as a formal part of the procedure. Previously, your executive session was how the council, right? So what the process was, so your procedures provided, council would hear the applicant or ask questions of the applicant, then council would enter and hear the other applicants, then they would enter into executive session. And then, and in executive session, there would be discussion of the candidates and discussion of the choice to be made, and then council would come out and make a historically unanimous decision until recently, right? So there was this process, and it's that process and that use of executive session that was brought up even during the last meeting. A couple council members brought it up, trying to understand what the consultation would look like. So that's why it's brought up. But you're right, here you have your procedure codified, and you have your vote, and and then the executive session just is not part of this procedure. But that does not prevent you from having an executive session if you have a basis for it.
Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So a couple of things, just to clarify, Mr. Johnson. One candidate cannot end executive session. A candidate can decide not to have a discussion of that candidate in executive session. That does not preclude the members of executive session from discussing the other candidates. It just says we won't talk about Stu Graham in executive session, but we're going to talk about, Ms. Cottle and Ms. Vlock in executive session because they have okayed that. So he's not stopping executive session, or that person is not stopping executive session. They're just stopping us from discussing that person in executive session. And kind of an overriding thing to this whole discussion seems to be this unanimous decision. There is no unanimous decision required. City code says decisions of the city council will be made by a quorum of those present. So if, we don't all need to agree to put somebody on the city council. In the past, the city council has most often decided to cast a unanimous vote for a candidate, but there's no requirement for that. That was the decision of the council at the time. So the part of the city code that says there has to be a quorum still holds, but this would overwrite that part of the city code that says, well, if there's 5 candidates, one gets 2 votes, that's the candidate there. So that takes the city council out of that decision process and takes the idea of a quorum of the council approving something and puts that on the side burner for this. So once again, I think we're fixing a problem here that doesn't exist. So.
Okay, is there further discussion?
Madam Mayor, I move to exit committee of the whole.
Is there a second?
Madam Mayor, I second the motion.
It's been moved by Councilmember Graham and seconded by Councilmember Crafton to exit committee of the whole. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, we are out of the committee of the whole at 7:26 p.m. We are now at communications. Madam Clerk, please read the title of informational memorandum.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's item number 2409, quarterly financial reports for the period ending March 31st, 2024, to include the month-to-date expenditure report, disbursements greater than $10,000, investment report, the quarterly report of businesses receiving a penalty waiver for sales tax.
Okay. We are now at audience comments. It is 3 minutes per person. We are now at audience comments, a time for members of the public to share their views with the council. This is not a question and answer period or a time for dialogue. Speakers may be referred to administration, or issues raised may be taken under advisement by the council or administration. Additionally, over the last year, the city of Wasilla has routinely had members of the public attend and read excerpts from novels, some of which involve sexual content and or descriptions of incest and domestic violence that are not intended for children under the age of 14 and or may be triggering to listeners and viewers based upon their past experiences. For those of you with young children viewing or listening to the meeting, or who may be triggered by the descriptions of incest or domestic violence, please be aware we are now entering public comment and you may want to mute the video or temporarily exit the meeting. We will notify the public when audience comment has ended and the council is moving onto the next item of the agenda. For those of you participating in audience comments tonight, I respectfully ask you to remember that our attendees, viewers, and listeners may be under the age of 14, are victims of domestic violence, and are not choosing to read the passages that you are choosing to read to them. Anyone for audience comments? Please begin your testimony by giving your first and last name. And if you live in the city, you have 3 minutes.
Greetings again. My name is Jackie Goforth. I live in Matsu Valley. When I spoke to you last, just a bit ago, about agendas that are in novels that people don't know about, I particularly want you to bring your attention to this one, which created a lot of interest throughout the valley. This book has been moved to the adult section, and it's all about teen sex relationships and being a human. And if you look on page, I think it's 29, it says man, F-U-C-K, the patriarchy. Why is something like that in a relation book for teens? Do you see how hidden the agenda is? Do you see the agenda? That's a Marxist agenda, and I just read you, it's in BLM, and now it's in this book. Now, what I gave you just now is a very flattering portrait of me. I was speaking at the school district, And the Frontiersman is not a very reliable newspaper. As you can see, it said the school board renews the library committee for next year. And if you look at the file, at the comment of the article, it says the board voted 6-1 to renew the Library Citizens Advisory Committee, with member Ted Swanson casting the sole vote against it. But if you look at what they were really voting on, I had a copy of it. And finally, they were voting that the board will not review the Citizens Advisory Committee. The vote was to disband it. I was there. Why would the Frontiersman write an article with that kind of headline if they didn't want people to have a little problem with people who are speaking about these books? That is such a false statement. Ted Swanson is the only one who actually voted to keep the committee going. Actually, he was voting against the rest of the thing, if you look at it, the rest of the... Seriously, this is what the newspapers are putting out for news. I would suggest everyone do their own research, because we are in an agenda of pushing Marxism into our wonderful freedom. July 4th, we're going to celebrate it. Everybody in the United States is going to celebrate our day of freedom, and yet we have people who are trying to harm it. And I'm fighting them, and I'm there, as I told them at the Matsu Health Foundation, there's a line, and I'm standing on it, and I'm not going anywhere. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Please begin your testimony by stating your first and last name. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Jeannie Trushinsky. I'm the president of the Wasilla Library Association, established in 1938, doing business as the Friends of Wasilla Public Library since 1985. I've tried to get here for a couple meetings, but I've had so many things going on, I had to keep leaving for graduations and everything. So I wanted to update you on a lot of great things that are happening at the library. We had our Aspen Yarrow concert. Josh Freifogel said the library would be an amazing place to have a concert, and it really was acoustically amazing. We had 130 people come. We thought it'd be great if 50 people showed up, but there was 130 people there. I continue to hear great feedback about it. 47 of the people that came and watched the concert were under the age of 12 and under. So it was really, really fun. We had a pre-reception ahead of time, and folks could meet Aspen Yarrow, and there were some nonprofit groups there, like the Matsu Food Bank, and people just really had just a lovely evening. And so we're hoping to do that again a couple more times in the year. We raised $892 from the event, and were able to give that to summer reading. So it was really, really awesome. We had 2 author visits in May. Andy Hall, who wrote Denali's Howl, came, and we had 24 people who came for that. It's really fun, really a fascinating story about the biggest climbing accident on Mount McKinley. We had Melinda Mitchell, who wrote Next of Kin. It's her first book, and the first thing that she did when she got here, she lives out of state now, but she said, I want to see if they still have some of the books that I used to read for summer reading. And so she went and looked in the section of the books to see if there were still some of the same books that she always loved as a reader. That's really a really cool thing, because she's a grown-up now and writing books. We have our story walk, and this, right now, our current story walk is Feathers Together. It's based on a true story about 2 storks. One of them is injured and cannot fly anymore or migrate away, and so its mate migrates every year with all the other storks, but the injured bird stays with the family, and for 17 years its mate returns to it. It's a true story. It's really beautiful and really amazing illustrations. Our next book is going to be sponsored by the Imagination Library, which Dolly Parton started, and is a really great program here in the Valley. And we also just got a grant from the Matsu Health Foundation for art for seniors in the library, and we're doing a survey right now to see what kind of art program seniors would be interested in. So I have that for you, for Christy to hand out. Thank you. I forgot to say thank you. Not the thank you word.
Thank you.
Okay, please begin your testimony by giving your first and last name, and if you live in the city, you have 3 minutes.
My name's Karen Lewis. Good evening. You know, if the libraries and the librarians, if what she just said, if that's what they did, if that's what, I would applaud them. But that is not what's going on in there. And, I mean, why doesn't she come up and talk about the lovely obscene books that they're shelving in there? I mean, you guys have heard this. You have heard the obscenity, right? Are you tired of it? I tell you what, I'm really tired of it. I'm tired of this. You guys need to do something. I'm serious. You can do something, right? You guys can do something. Get some good people on there. You guys have, I know most of you have very good character and don't believe in these books. Then do something. You have been given the authority to do something. You too. Do something about this. You've heard the filth in those books. I don't know if Miss Cottle has. She just is new, but she's heard some. It's filthy. We have to get that garbage out of the hands of children. Don't call 14-year-olds young adults, because they're not. I'd really like to not come here again. But I'm not going to stop until these books are out of there. Someone's got to keep the foxes out of the hen house, and you guys are just cozying up. That's not true. Someone is, though. Someone's cozying up to the libraries and the librarians that are allowing this, and it's just disgusting. Our mayor should put her foot down. She should demand that those books are out of there. But no. They stay, they continue. Then council, you can overrule that. And I'm asking you to do that. I mean, I know that we could get a whole lot more people in here to start complaining and start reading that filth. We don't need to, I mean, who wants that? So please do something. Would you put your heads together? I mean, you're talking about flipping a coin tonight for a half hour. Talk about things that you could do to get those horrible books out of the hands of the children, please. Please. Please.
Mr. Stearns, you want to finish? No. Okay. Okay, we will close audience comments, bring it back to the dais. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Are you going to talk about
You can.
I can, okay. So we'll start with candidate filing period. Council seats A and B will be on the ballot this year. Candidate filing is July 15th through 26th. So stop by the clerk's office, or candidate filing packets will be available online, I believe, July 10th. July 4th events, 11 a.m. parade downtown Wasilla. Our theme is the spirit of Wasilla, 50 years of service to the community. And so each department made a poster board for the show. I've seen them. A lot of them are really creative and really neat. So if you don't have anything to do, go to the parade. 1 to 3 is the mayor's picnic. I did a park lawn, and then 3 to 9 p.m. music in the park finale, Wonderland Park. And we'll see you here next regular meeting, July 8th.
Okay. Councilmember Velock.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let's see, I do want to thank everyone for coming. And I want to thank the council for our discussions tonight. I think they're real helpful, and that's about it. Thank you.
Councilmember Crafton.
Thank you, Mayor. I had one question for the attorney. Could you update us on why we were holding off on doing anything with our own library? Could you just give us a refresher? And if we know if any update on it?
Yes, there is a legal case pending that involves the removal of books from a borough, Matsu Borough Library. And so we are waiting for the decision in that case, and so that it addresses any uncertainty surrounding the procedures that we would go through after. And then I think a lot of changes were made and discussed by the library director as a choice by the administration, really, in response to some of the concerns that were raised. And so I guess it's twofold. You have that piece, but you also have the pending litigation that we are waiting to see what the outcome of that is. There was a preliminary injunction filed in that case, and to my knowledge, no decision has been issued even on that piece. So that will be the first step, is whether or not they're enjoined from removing the books. The other aspect of that is your procedures are currently based and housed in the administration. And I think council expressed an interest in looking at other options for that procedure and what that looks like and so the adoption of those procedures are going to touch on not only litigation in the borough itself, but also throughout the United States right now.
So the policy portion that she mentioned there was actually something that I've been interested in looking at, and I don't know how the rest of the council feels about it. We've had many meetings with people coming forward. We've even now had to put a disclaimer on our own public comments because people are reading this stuff that they're pulling from our library. And it's probably time that we have a committee of the whole conversation about what we want to do and how we could improve upon our policy on the reconsideration of our materials that are in the library and how we procure those materials as well. It's something that I think we really should do. The rest of the council is interested in it. Again, I think I really like to utilize that committee of the whole. We can have a free-flowing conversation in front of the public. We also have the ability to have public comment at those times as well, and see what people have to say after we've had things to say about it. So that's my thought on it. So I would appreciate it. Another comment I wanted to make, and Eric, you probably might jump in on this one. Just thinking about the parks again, I've spent quite some time here at our parks. The one recently I was at was Nunley Park, and I noticed there was quite a bit of paint chipping off and rust on some of the play equipment there. Are we going to be jumping on trying to repair any of that? Because some of it was starting to come loose. The handles on the equipment and everything, as well as, like I said, there was quite a bit of rust building up due to paint chipping.
We have a rotational inspection that we do, so we really appreciate it if you just let us know. I'll have them check that out. We want to tune those areas up. It's kind of a seem to be dying all of a sudden. It's kind of a question between what's regular maintenance and what's kind of an expensive overhaul. We're kind of lacking in an overall play structure replacement schedule. It's something that's desperately needed. So I'll have staff look at it and see if it's something we can address through the maintenance side, or if we need to have more of a broader discussion for a replacement schedule for those structures. Something Finance Director Olin and I have been talking about is the need for replacement of structures, the extreme costs, the time it takes, the community outreach that's usually required for important decisions made in the parks. And so that's something that we're going to work on bringing through the Parks and Rec planning. It touches a lot of different departments, and it's very impactful on the community, and we don't want to do it out in a vacuum, but we also want the council to understand it's a pretty expensive overtaking to replace equipment. So, but which park was it again?
Nunley Park.
Nunley. We'll check it out. Thank you.
Thank you. Other than that, I just really appreciate the council's conversation on filling the vacancy. Mr. Graham did say it's not something that's necessarily broken, but I also believe sometimes part of our job is not always to fix broken things, but just to improve on things that we have existing. It's things we should sometimes be doing. I know it's boring reading our code, but just finding something that maybe we could do a little bit better. That's partly our job up here. So thank you all for coming tonight. Appreciate the council, and we'll see you guys later. And we'll see you on the 4th, hopefully, first.
Councilmember Rubio.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On that note, you won't see me on the 4th. I will have my family in Seward for the Mount Marathon race as usual, and my husband and I are almost 20 years in. On that note, we're usually not in town for the Miles for Meals, and we just happened to be in town, and my kids had such a blast. They range from 9 to 15, you've seen them. They enjoyed the music, the whole setup. The barbecue is cute. We had to leave early. One of my kids had tryouts for All-Star Baseball, but it was put on. It was beautiful. It was good. And a perfect day. A little bit too hot, but I mean, I'm not going to complain about it.
We can't do anything about that.
Right. So that was awesome. Other than that, that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Cottle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a quick question for Holly. Where are we at, or how soon will we be getting the changes to Title 16 back?
Finally, I'm excited to answer this question. So a draft has gone to a final draft, but we are still working through some of the dimensional requirements to staff, to city staff, and I fully expect both the ordinance and a memo to be before council for introduction at your July 8th meeting. So one thing you will see in the new draft is it's broken into divisions. So there's a complete rework of the structure and order of the title to create readability and to group things together, which previously they were sort of all over the place. And so this is going, and then we'll walk through. So it won't be, what I would say is it will take a few council sessions, I believe, before you're going to be passing the ordinance, similar to our code of ethics, simply because all of your comments and recommendations are, and those of the planning commission are presented here, plus a lot of other changes that sort of one led to the other. So the update is it'll be introduced at your July 8th meeting. And council will have a lot of work to do still as we move through it, I suspect.
Thank you. I know I'm a little weird, but I actually really look forward to it coming back to us and going through it. I know it's been a lot of work, and I appreciate everything that you're doing on it. I do want to mention something to the mayor with your comments with the public being able to speak and your comments about the passages that have been read, and it may not be appropriate for younger people and triggering for others. I do appreciate you saying that and bringing that up. From my upbringing in my first marriage, being a survivor of incest and domestic violence, it is very triggering. And I know I'm not the only one. So I appreciate your statement with that tonight. Other than that, I am so looking forward to 4th of July. I'm gonna have 3 very rambunctious grandsons, God help me, helping me with the parade. But it should be fun, right?
Yeah.
It'll be lots of fun. I am really sad that I was not here for the Meals on Wheels fundraiser. I would have much rather been there than the camping trip from hell I was on. So next year, no camping trip on that weekend. But other than that, I hope everybody has a great 4th. It's such an awesome parade and mayor's picnic. I am going to make sure I'm at Music for the Park and not just listening from my house. I want to be there and experience it firsthand. So
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I want to thank everybody that came tonight and commented. Particularly, it's good to see Senator Wilson's office here. I know there's not a whole lot that you're going to take back from this and say, oh my God, the state's going to change this. And get on it, Dave. But it's good to have somebody from the senator's office here or listening in and obviously letting us know if the senator has some concerns that he would like us to deal with. So thank you for being here, and thank everybody for being here. I know people say they get tired of listening to people talking about the library, well, you know, the library is an issue, and they're here to talk about issues, and that's fine. And I couldn't agree more with Councilmember Cottle and the mayor that certain things are inappropriate. And kind of in that vein, I know all of you will be surprised to know that when I was a teenager, from time to time, the F-bomb may have come out of my mouth. But when it did, my father acted, I thought, very appropriately, but his wasn't based on the fact that the words coming out of my mouth were obscene. In his eyes, the words coming out of my mouth were vulgar and intended to insult someone. And I think that should be part of our discussion and part of our, in the back of our brains is what we're talking about, obscenity, which, what the hell is wrong with this microphone system today? Is what we're talking about obscenity as defined by the courts, or is what we're talking about vulgarity as defined by the public? You know, I mean, we're here to represent the citizens, we're here to represent the public, and our library should show that as well. There are certain rights that we have, and there are certain things that the Supreme Court has said are the law of the land regarding, you know, freedom of speech and other things, and we'll be celebrating, you know, everything that we do as Americans here on the 4th of July, but that doesn't mean that everything goes, you know, so we as a community can decide, you know, if something's vulgar, you know, we need to address that differently. So while Jeannie was here, oh, she's still in the back, she talked about the library walk. If you haven't done that yet, it's a series of stations outside the library, out in Mother Nature, where a book essentially is taken apart and 1 or 2 pages is at each station, and you do this walk around the library. I don't remember how many stations there are, seems like there's about 20 or so, but you do this walk around the outside of the library, and you read the book. It's intended for something that a parent could do with a child or with a grandchild, but even if you just do it on your own, it's interesting to see what children are interested in, because these are not books that are just chosen at random. These are books that have high interest and typically have some sort of local interest as well. So if you haven't done the library walk, I highly encourage you to get out and do that, particularly while it's 850 degrees outside today. So, and then a quick question for Public Works, Eric. The Lakeview Condo Homeowners Association expressed some concern about the lighting going in at the depot after the paving. Their questions had to do with the upward escapement of light, you know, potentially damaging their nighttime view of the skies there, and then, you know, what the pattern of light was going to be from those lights that were on there. Have you had a chance to talk about that? I know light poles typically have vents on the top, which are intended to cool what's going on inside, but these are LED lights, or is there going to be upward escapement of light, and is there any attempt to control that upward escapement?
So the light fixtures are the same that we installed at the new parking lot at the Menard Center. What I've seen from their operation is that they don't have upward escapement. They're what I would consider mostly full cutoff, so they're shining down. I haven't noticed any light pollution from the Menard Center lights. I think they'll be satisfactory to the neighbors in that respect.
Great, and if you could reply to that email with that, I'll make sure that gets forwarded on to the
Absolutely. People
that have been talking. I appreciate that. So I mentioned before, we certainly appreciate everybody doing everything. Tom, it's good to see you back. You know, it's always fun to deal with Wazi and to listen to what's going on. Sorry you ran out of 3 minutes today, but you know, the mayor gives you a second shot at it, so take advantage of that. And finally, for the attorney, you know, I have nothing against you, Holly, but it's the position of city attorney that you and I have an issue with. The city attorney is a staff member, not a member of the council. And I see many of your comments made from almost a personal standpoint, which is a purview and a privilege of the council members, not of the staff, unless asked, what is your personal opinion of something? You know, I, for one, think you were just way out of order today. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. You know, how far you went. This is my time, not yours. So in my opinion, you were way out of order. You've had your chance to comment. You were way out of order, and the comments from the attorney need to be, you know, about your specialty, which is municipal governance, of which you're obviously well-versed and well-aware and well-practiced. But as far as your personal opinions go, they have no place here in the city council meeting where you, as an unelected person, that's not what people are looking for. They're looking for legal opinion and legal advice. So thank everybody for being here, and thank you, Madam Mayor.
Madam City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple comments. One, I would just say, so at the July 8th meeting, when you have the Title 16 in front of you, Zoe Eisberg from our office is going to be here to walk you through the use chart, just the use chart. So you're going to have the whole title, but first focus, because we changed the permitting, is the use. And so everybody needs to be paying attention to what you see out there. And that is my professional opinion, not my personal one. It really helps do things the way we need to do under the law if you can go out there in the community and observe what uses you like, what uses you don't. And that comes from my experience. Councilmember Graham, I do want to address, we have a contract and there was an interview process, and this council did ask me what my approach to advising councils is and what kind of style I have in doing so. I've been doing this job for 20 years. If council wants a silent attorney who does not share professional experience alongside the advice that I give you, there are so many of those attorneys in this community. It is not easy for me to tell a council that is my boss, right, that hires and fires me, things that they don't want to hear. But I've made a career on doing that, and I stand by that choice as an attorney. But ultimately, if council decides they want a different type of attorney, that is always within council's purview. And I would remind you that we're in a contract. It's not a contract that is ever binding on council beyond the moment in time. So it's an agreement to create certainty of rates. And I am bound by it. Birchworth, Bittner, and Chiro is bound by that contract, but council can always terminate our legal services.
Mr. Johnson.
No comment, Mayor.
Okay. First of all, they talked about the library again, and all of those books that they've been reading from are not in our library. The one book that they've read out of forever is not even in our library. It's in Willow's library. That's where they got it, not ours. We have moved young adult to the adult section. And like Holly stated, we are waiting for a decision so that we don't have to go back and go through the same litigation and whatever that is going on now. Other than that, 4th of July is coming. And nothing better than the parade and the picnic. Last year, we served 3,500 hot dogs. And I believe I stuffed half of the hot dog buns, but probably not. But anyway, it's always a great time. It's hard to believe that we will have from 10 to 12, 13, 14,000 people in Wasilla that day. But they're here. And this year, with our new parade route, I think it's gonna go a lot smoother, lacking of a better word, than it normally does. So, come out, and enjoy the parade, come to the mayor's picnic, and then music in the park. We've got stuff going from 11 when the parade starts until 9 that night. So come and enjoy. There'll be a good time for kids. You know, they have the hot dog eating contest. Yeah, a lot of them little kids eat too many hot dogs and don't make it out of the park. So anyway, everybody come and enjoy the parade, and let's all have a good time. Thank you, and with that, we are adjourned at 7:59.